Welcome to Neverland. My name is Matthias Merkelbach and I'm talking to you about forgotten records. First of all, I need to excuse myself. I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm making slight mistakes or may use one or two phrases irregularly as you figure out. That's fine with me, and hopefully it's okay with you either. Why do we need another channel about rock and pop music anyway? There are so many great people out there talking about rock music and pop music's history, and they do a wonderful job. I like to listen to some of them deliberately as well. Got a lot of valuable recommendations from these people over the last years. But then there is one thing I figured. Mostly people are talking about Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Steely Dan, Jethro Tull, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, or Kate Bush. They're talking about a lot of these 70s and 80s mainstream rock artists that mostly do not really appeal to me. They honestly never did. And if I'm taking a look at my age and doing the math, no, they probably never will. So I figure there are hundreds and thousands of records in many people's collections we hardly ever talk about. These artists and their contributions to the history of rock and pop music are hardly ever mentioned. And that is the basic idea behind Neverland. Let's talk about that outsiders stuff, the ones on the periphery of pop and rock music who definitely did some valuable work themselves. So let's dive into it, shall we? The first record I deliberately picked for the first episode of Neverland is Martin Newell's Under Wartime Condition. It's under the name of Cleaners from Venus. That is the name that Martin Newell used for his home recordings early 80s, a collection of pop songs by Cleaners from Venus. I purchased this album in 1985 in a local record store in Bonn entitled Normal Records. Later on, Normal also became a record label, started with Colin Newman and other stuff from England, then just shifted into American artists like Chris Kakavas and Townes Van Zandt. Mid-80s, they had a record store in Bonn, and I just bought this album mostly because I liked the title, I liked the cover artwork, I gave it a listen, and it did convince me. Martin Newell, or Cleaners from Venus, at this point is pretty much about jingle, jangle, pop, 60s influenced, but then also new wave drenched songs, 10 songs on this album that are really, really giving you a little bit of a feel of that swinging London kind of vibe from the mid 60s, but also are very much focusing on topics relevant for the 80s. So they're just bridging these two eras, and he made it very nice. He did a great job. Under Wartime Conditions is because these are home recordings. Originally, Martin Newell popped up in glam rock formations in the mid-70s. Local bands that never really made it then had a pop rock outfit entitled The Stray Trolleys. There was an album of their works that came out approximately 10 years ago, something like that, but I think they never just did anything during their lifetime. In 1980, Martin Newell presented a single on Stiff Records in England entitled Young and Jobless. Great title. I don't have the single because it's quite expensive these days, but I love the title, to be honest. Wonderful. Then he did something else. He shifted into home recordings, gave himself the name Cleaners from Venus, which never really was a band. He took in a collaborator once or in a while who was just contributing to the music for a period of time, but mostly it was Martin himself who was distributing his home recordings via audio tape. Record manufacturing obviously was pretty expensive. So during the era of punk and new wave, the distribution of music via audio tape was something quite regular. He distributed his tapes to local record stores in England. And I imagine that in 1984, when he came out with Under Wartime Conditions, some guys from the German record label Modell Records, located in that small city of Bottrop, were listening to this tape and telling themselves, wow, that's a great record, great songwriting. Let's put it out on vinyl. And so they did. That is the German pressing, the only one that was available at that time, available during the 80s and 90s even, from this original cassette of Martin, and it came out in 1985 when I just bought it at the local record store in Bonn. Martin Newell is still around in 2025, still doing great. He had a lot of records under the name of Cleaners from Venus that he is just distributing himself via Bandcamp. He has a lot of records under his own name as well. So check him out. You will find the link to his pages in the description of this video. Finally, I also would like to just mention that philosophy of Martin, because he's still doing home recordings. And on the flip side, on this album, the first one that came out on vinyl, the first Cleaners from Venus album, he just stated that what this philosophy is all about. And it's worthwhile reading it because I always loved this little statement of himself according to his philosophy. The whole thing, he wrote way back then, was recorded in a bedroom on a TEAC 144. Take your hat off when you say that name. It kind of proved that the technocracy are talking bullshit when they tell you you need to buy all that expensive tackle. To the disaffected youth, to the microchip underclass, to the unemployed, pop music belongs to you. It does not belong to the cynical manipulators of multinational corporations. Take it back from them now. If you cannot afford to buy this record, you have my full permission to tape it as if you need it. Now go out and do it yourselves. This is pop. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the original statement from Martin Newell, written on this record sleeve way back in 1985. It sounds pretty much needed in our days as well, doesn't it? But of course, it is 40 years old. So thank you very much for listening to my first presentation right here on that channel entitled Neverland. If you liked what I had to say, you may hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, hopefully, see you next time. Bye-bye.